Reincarnation forever. This is the ultimate moment of liberation, and it happens the instant you die, but almost no one recognizes it. Why? Because we are conditioned to fear the unknown. The soul panics, clings to its memories, its identity, its unfinished desires. Instead of embracing the light, it recoils, and the moment fear takes over, the illusions begin. You'll start to hear sounds, whispers, echoes of voices that feel familiar, but distorted, as if calling from behind a veil. The world around you will shift, and instead of light, you will begin to see forms, patterns, shadows, glimpses of what seem to be people or places you once knew, but none of it is real. Not yet. The mind is grasping, searching for meaning, and in doing so, it begins to create the very reality that will define the rest of your journey. This is where most souls lose their way. Instead of recognizing death as an opportunity for liberation, they fall into confusion. They seek comfort in familiarity, and the mind obliges, projecting the world they once knew, recreating familiar SES faces and voices. Some even see religious figures they worshipped in life, not realizing that these two are only manifestations of their own subconscious beliefs. If they knew the truth that none of it is real, that they are being tested, they could let go, but instead they follow these visions deeper into the BU, the intermediate state between death and rebirth. The first few moments after death are the most important. The Tibetan Book of the Dead teaches that awareness is the key, that those who have prepared for this moment can pass through the illusions and break free. But for the unprepared, for those still clinging to their past lives, what comes next is unavoidable. They will move through the 49-day journey, experiencing visions that will either guide them toward enlightenment or trap them in yet another cycle of rebirth. The next phase of the journey is about to begin, but before we go deeper into the forbidden knowledge of the BU, should know some of the most profound truths about the afterlife can't be shared openly. That's why we reveal them inside Insights Academy, our free newsletter, where we explore what can't be discussed here. Sign up now at the link in the description and receive a free copy of the Kalina Book of Hidden Wisdom that has been studied for centuries. The BU is waiting. The illusions are forming, and the journey through the realm between worlds is only just beginning. You are now in the bardo, the space between life and the next existence. Time no longer flows the way it did when you were alive. Seconds stretch into eternity, yet days can pass in an instant. You have no body, no voice, only awareness. But here's the problem. Most people don't realize they have died. They're trapped in a dreamlike state, clinging to the echoes of their past life, unable to accept that everything they once knew is gone. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes the B as a shifting, unstable realm, a place where reality bends and distorts, where thoughts become things, and where the mind itself creates the experience. Every fear, every desire, every hidden emotion that was buried in life now takes form. The journey through this realm lasts exactly 49 days, a process that unfolds in stages, and for most it is terrifying. In the beginning there is confusion. The soul tries to return home to its family, its loved ones. It lingers around familiar places, trying to speak, trying to be seen, but no one responds, no one hears, and the realization begins to sink in. This is not a dream, this is death. But even then the mind resists. It clings to its identity, refusing to accept the inevitable. It seeks comfort, logic, explanations, anything to hold on to. But the B does not provide comfort. It is not a place of rest. It is a place of transition, where the soul must confront itself in its purest form. At first the experience is neutral, even peaceful. There is no physical pain, no suffering, only awareness. Some describe the stage as floating through a vast open. We're unprepared, because if people truly understood what happens after death, it would shatter everything, their beliefs, their fears, their entire perception of reality. Think about it. If death is not an end, if it is not a punishment, if there is no divine judgment, then what happens to the control systems built on those very ideas? Religions would crumble, governments would lose power, society, as we know, it would unravel for centuries. Religious institutions have preached about heaven and hell, about divine punishment, about the need to obey higher authorities to secure a place in the afterlife. These narratives serve a purpose: control. If people believe that an external force dictates their fate after death, they will follow, they will conform, they will fear. But what if the truth is that no one is judging you? but yourself at the afterlife is not about punishment or reward, but simply your own mind reflecting back at you. This knowledge was kept hidden because it would destroy the idea that salvation comes from an external source. It would force people to accept something much more terrifying, that they are fully responsible for their own fate. And that's not all. Modern science is beginning to confirm aspects of these ancient teachings. Near-death experiences, and these are filled with eerily similar descriptions. People report seeing the clear light, encountering their life review, feeling an overwhelming sense of peace or fear, depending on their actions in life, even cutting edge. Quantum physics is starting to suggest that consciousness is not confined to the brain, that it may persist beyond death, that it may operate outside the limits of time and space. For centuries, this knowledge was dismissed as superstition, but now the lines between ancient wisdom and modern science are starting to blur. So why don't more people know about this? Because the system is designed to keep you distracted, to keep you focused on the material world, on temporary pleasures, on meaningless fears. To keep blindness that keeps people believing everything they are told, never questioning the reality in front of them. If you are not conscious now, you will not be conscious after death. This is why so few people escape. The Book of the Dead teaches that the same habits, fears, and desires that shape our daily lives also shape what happens after we die. Those who live in ignorance die. In ignorance, those who are controlled by fear in life will be controlled by fear in death, and those who live chasing illusions will continue chasing them after their body is gone. The cycle is relentless. It is perfectly designed to keep us trapped. And the worst part, we're doing it to ourselves. But here's the truth. Most will never understand the cycle is not unbreakable. The Tibetan masters left behind these teachings for a reason, so that the few who are ready can wake up. And the first step is to see reality for what it really is, as most people will continue living the way they always have. They will tell themselves they have time, that they will think about death later, that right now there are more important things to focus on, and then in an instant their life will be over, and they will enter the be just as lost, just as confused as every soul before them. But for those who wake up now, who begin to break the cycle before it's too late, everything changes, is because preparation does not happen after death. It happens while you are still here. In that preparation is not about religion or dogma or rituals. It is about awareness, about seeing the illusions for what they are, about breaking free from the fears, the desires, the false identities that keep us trapped, not just in this life, but in the next. Because the question is no longer what happens after death. The real question is, are we already dead? Most will move on and forget what they just learned. They'll return to their distractions, their routines, their programmed existence. But the few who understand will know that this moment is a turning point. But now the question becomes even more urgent. If the way we live determines what happens when we die, then how do we prepare? How do we escape the cycle before it's too late? The answer is simpler than you think. If death is a test, then life is the study guide. But the problem is most people don't even know they're being tested. They live as if life is endless, as if death is some distant event that won't come for a long time. And then one day it does. The Tibetan masters taught that the only way to be conscious in death is to be conscious in life. If you spend your life running from reality, distracting yourself with temporary pleasures, and avoiding deep self-reflection, then when the moment comes, you will be completely unprepared. You will cling to your identity, to your fears, to your regrets, and in doing so, you will be pulled back into the cycle, lost in illusion once again. But there is another way. The first step to preparing for death is detachment, not in the sense of rejecting life, but in the sense of not being controlled by it. Most people are enslaved by their desires. They chase money, validation, status, relationships, thinking these things will bring happiness. But in the be, none of it matters. The only thing that determines your fate is the state of your consciousness. The more attached you are to the material world, the harder it will be to let go. And the harder it is to let go, the more likely you are to be reborn into another life of struggle, another cycle of forgetting. Detachment does not mean giving up everything and living in isolation. It means mastering your mind, learning to control your thoughts instead of letting them control you. It means understanding that nothing in this world is permanent, not your body, not your possessions, not even your identity. And once you truly grasp this, you will stop fearing death. The second step is awareness. The be is a realm of illusions, but so is life right now. Everything you see, everything you believe is a projection of your mind shaped by conditioning, fears, and external influences. If you do not learn to see through the illusions now, you will not see through them in death meditation. Self-inquiry and deep reflection are the keys to breaking free, not as religious practices, but as training for the final test. In the same way an athlete trains their body before a competition, the mind must be trained before it faces the afterlife, because in that moment your thoughts become your reality. If you have spent your life reacting with fear, doubt, and confusion, that is exactly what will consume you in death. But if you have spent your life cultivating clarity, presence, and detachment, then in the BU, you will recognize the illusions for what they are. You will not run, you will not cling, you will remain still, aware, and free. And that is the difference between those who escape and those who remain trapped. The third and final step is acceptance. Death is not something to be feared, nor is it something to avoid. Thinking about it is the most important moment of your existence, the moment when everything is revealed. If you live in fear of it, you will be ruled by fear in the afterlife. But if you embrace it as the natural transition, that is, you will approach it with peace instead of panic. The ancient masters spent their lives preparing for this moment, not because they were obsessed with death, but because they understood that life and death are the same thing. One cannot be mastered without the other. And that is why modern society keeps people distracted, because a world full of people who do not fear death is a world full of people who cannot be controlled. If you understand this, then you're already different from most. You're already waking up. But there's still one more truth you must know, because everything we have discussed, everything about the be, about illusions, about breaking free, is meaningless unless you know this final secret. Most people will never prepare for death. They will live their lives blindly, consumed by distractions, chasing illusions, fearing what they do not understand. And when the moment comes, they will be thrown into the BU, confused, lost, and unprepared, just as they were in life. But here's the final truth. Death does not change you. It only reveals you. The Tibetan Book of the Dead does not describe an afterlife in the way most people think. It does not promise a paradise for the good or a hell for the wicked. It does not place judgment on anyone, because the BU is not an external place. It is the mirror of your own consciousness. Everything you will experience after death, the clear light, the peaceful deities, the terrifying illusions, the life review, and the pull toward reincarnation, is nothing but a reflection of the mind you carried in life. If you lived in fear, you will die in fear. If you lived in attachment, you would die clinging to what is already gone. If you lived unconscious, you would drift through the afterlife in the same way, reacting, grasping, falling back into the cycle. But if you lived with awareness, if you trained your mind to see through illusion, if you prepared yourself while still alive, then in death you will recognize the be for what it is, a test, a transition, an opportunity. And that is the secret hidden for over 1,000 years. The reason these teachings were forbidden, because if people knew the truth, they would stop fearing death. They would stop wasting their lives on things that do not matter. They would stop being controlled by false beliefs, by religious institutions, by governments that use fear to keep them obedient. A person who understands death is a person who cannot be manipulated, because once you see the truth, once you understand that this life is only preparation for the next, everything changes. The way you think changes, the way you act changes. You no longer chase temporary pleasures or meaningless distractions. You no longer fear loss, because you know nothing was ever yours to begin with. You no longer cling to identity, because you realize it was never real. And when the moment comes, when you take your last breath and cross the threshold, you will not panic, you will not grasp, you will not be pulled back into the cycle of forgetting. You will simply be aware, and in that awareness, you will have a choice, a real choice, to break free or to return. Most will never reach this point. They will move on from this video, return to their routines, forget everything they have just learned. And when the moment comes, they will be unprepared. But you don't have to be. If you've made it this far, then you are already different from most. You are already seeking, and that is why we go even deeper inside Insights Academy, where we reveal the knowledge that cannot be shared here. Join now at the link in the description and receive a free copy of the Keelan, because the mind is the only thing that determines what happens next. But everything you've just learned is useless unless you understand this final truth, a truth that has been hit WR in secret government documents, a truth that reveals exactly what happens after death in ways even the Tibetan Book of the Dead could not describe. Click on the video you see right here to discover what they never wanted you to know. If this video resonated with you, let us know by commenting I understood it.